The film begins by following a boy named Adam Poznanski on his way to school. Along the way, an unknown man offers him a ride. Without realizing the danger, Adam accepts. As they travel, he observes the stranger. Sometime later, in a forest region, the man is seen dismembering Adam's body. 2 years after the death of Adam Poznanski, the story introduces prosecutor Leopold Bilski. As an administrative punishment, he is sent to the city and begins taking over the local cases. Upon arriving at the office, Leopold meets Andrei Kowalski, the chief of the local police. Andrei advises him to simply do his job during this period and comments jokingly that the place is not that bad. At the office, Leopold meets Steve, the local prosecutor who will work with him. Leopold says that he went out to get to know the city but did not see anything interesting. Then, Leopold asks if there is any case for them to investigate in the city. Steve replies that there is only a shoplifting case. Leopold is disappointed, but Steve says it is a serious crime in that city. With no other options, Leopold asks about the case of Adam Poznanski. Steve remembers the situation and explains that the boy was found safe. According to the information from the mother, he would be living with some cousins. Leopold comments that a friend is trying to close the file in the provincial records, but the system shows an error. Steve says that this is common and recommends that he look for Commander Adam. Later, Leopold and Steve go out to eat and are served by Elizabeth. She asks about Leopold's daughter's visit and comments that she will be able to enjoy the Harvest Festival. Then Elizabeth greets Julia Sarman, a murder mystery writer. Upon discovering that she bought the house by the lake, Elizabeth talks with Julia, who also introduces her son Pietro. Julia asks if the men are writers, but Leopold explains that they are local prosecutors. After that, Leopold finds Commander Adam and asks about the case of Adam Poznanski. He comments that he found no records proving that the boy was found. The commander repeats the version that Adam is living with some cousins, but Leopold is not convinced by the explanation and keeps asking questions. When asked why he is investigating the case, he replies that it is only curiosity. Later, Leopold searches the files in the storage room, but finds nothing. When he asks Steve for help, he recommends that he look for the commander again. Leopold says that he already tried, but received no attention. Then, he asks how he can contact Adam's parents. Later, Leopold visits Adam's mother to better understand the case. She confirms that she reported the boy's disappearance, but later stated that he was with his cousins. Leopold finds the situation strange and asks to speak with Adam, but she says she lost contact with him. After more questions, the woman becomes irritated and ends the conversation. At another moment, Julia appears before the grave of Angelica Burchard, her sister, until she is interrupted by Pietro. Later, Patrick finds Julia and her son at the market, remembers that they studied together, and shows happiness at seeing her again. When he asks about her mother, Julia looks uncomfortable and says she does not have time to visit her. During the night, Julia talks with Pietro, who asks why they cannot see his grandmother. She answers that her mother is angry with her, but admits that she does not know why. The next day, Leopold takes Monica to the festival and ends up meeting Julia. She asks if he came to enjoy the moment with his daughter, and he confirms it. During the conversation, Leopold comments that he was transferred to the city and asks what brought Julia there. Realizing that she hesitates to answer, he says she can speak when she feels comfortable. Julia admits that she does not like questions, but reveals that she is in the city to work on a new book. Before the conversation continues, Pietro calls her, and she invites Leopold and Monica to visit her house by the lake. As they walk, Julia catches the attention of Arik, a man with a large burn on his face, who begins to follow her. He approaches and says that he heard the rumors, asking if she remembers what she did to him. Frightened, Julia tries to ignore him and move away. But Arik begins shouting to Pietro and to the people nearby that she was responsible for his burn. Julia then goes to the stage to follow the speech of Fabiola, her mother. During the moment, she becomes emotional when she sees her, but soon realizes that Pietro has disappeared. In panic, she searches for her son and finds Leopold, telling him what happened. Then, Eric is interrogated by Leopold and the commander. He admits that he spoke with Julia, but says he does not know where Pietro is, saying that he went out drinking after the encounter. Noticing the man's resentment against Julia, Adam asks if he is hiding something. Eric explains that his resentment toward Julia comes from high school, when she and her friends assaulted him and then left him near a bonfire. Adam is surprised to discover that Julia is from the city and the mayor's daughter. Later, Leopold and some police officers search Eric's apartment. During the search, Leopold talks with Frank, Eric's father, who confirms the story, but says that Eric would never hurt a child. Leopold discovers that Frank worked in the church choir for many years and asks about Adam. He says that the boy was good and had been his best hire. Leopold asks if he was still in the choir when Adam returned to participate, but Frank replies that he was not. Later, Leopold finds Julia and reveals that he still has not managed to locate Pietro, making her even more worried. Elizabeth suggests that he may have gone home, and Leopold decides to accompany her there. However, they also do not find the boy, and Julia still cannot calm down. During the conversation, Julia reveals that children were killed in that place. Leopold asks what she is talking about, and she explains that her sister died there. When he asks if she was kidnapped, Julia replies that her sister took her own life. Leopold tries to learn more, but she cannot talk about the subject. Then, he suggests that Pietro may have gone to his grandmother's house. Julia says that this would be impossible, because the two had never had contact. Leopold believes that the boy may have discovered something and gone after answers. With no other options, Julia goes to her mother's house and confronts her about Pietro's whereabouts. Fabiola says that she does not know where he is and says she did not even know of the boy's existence, but Julia does not believe her. Fabiola then snaps back, saying that some people are not prepared to be mothers. Julia leaves and tells Leopold that she did not find her son. Fabiola asks if he is the child's father, but he denies it and introduces himself. Then, she gives her some sleeping pills, saying they may help her. The next day, the search for Pietro intensifies on land and in the water. While Julia tries to deal with the situation, Patrick reappears to talk. He tries to reassure her, saying that the whole city is looking for Pietro and that he will be fine. Julia asks if he knows anything, but Patrick admits that he does not. Then, he offers to create a page on the internet and help with the search, saying that her popularity may contribute. In the middle of the conversation, Julia becomes emotional and starts crying. Patrick reveals that he liked her back in school, but never had the courage to tell her. Julia remains silent, and he approaches trying to kiss her. Surprised by the attitude, she reacts with discomfort and asks what he is doing. Realizing that he interpreted the situation wrongly, Patrick apologizes and leaves. During the night, Julia looks at Patrick's profile on social media and begins to suspect him. Later, she goes to his house secretly to investigate and is almost seen by the man. When Patrick leaves to take a shower, Julia enters the place and searches for clues about Pietro. However, her search is interrupted by the arrival of a car, forcing her to hide. Patrick goes out to receive the person, and Julia discovers that he is in a relationship with her mother. Surprised, she quickly leaves the place. The next morning, the search continues for Pietro. During the search, a police officer finds remains of old clothes and a small skull, alerting the others. Leopold goes to Julia's house to inform her about the remains found. She falls into despair, but he explains that they do not belong to Pietro because they have been there for a long time. After calming down, Julia talks with Leopold about her sister Angelica. She reveals that her mother forced them to sing in the church choir, but Angelica began to feel sick, and later they discovered that she had poisoned herself. Julia also says that, during choir, she witnessed a man doing inappropriate things with a boy. Leopold asks if she told anyone, but she says her mother did not allow it. When asked about the person responsible, Julia says she only remembers Mikkel Pakos, her boss's son. Later, Leopold returns to pick up Monica, who was with Elizabeth, but cannot find her. Elizabeth's son explains that his mother went out and left the girl under his responsibility, but he had to step away for a moment. Desperate, Leopold begins looking for his daughter. In panic, Leopold searches for Monica through the city, already with little hope of finding her. He goes to the park and finds her playing with another child and a woman. Relieved, he scolds his daughter for going out alone. The woman explains that she found Monica and decided to take care of her while he was busy. Leopold thanks her for the help, but before leaving she warns him to pay attention because the disappearances of children in the city are concerning. Later, Leopold puts Monica to sleep and decides that she cannot remain in the city. He calls his ex-wife and asks her to come pick her up because he does not consider the place safe. The next morning, she arrives to take their daughter, and Leopold explains his concern. Irritated, she says that he is not prepared to be a father, saying that he dedicates himself to a missing boy, but not to his own daughter. Leopold prefers not to argue and says goodbye. The next day, Leopold visits Mikkel, who apologizes for not taking care of his daughter. He says that everything is fine and comments that he heard Michael was part of the choir. After the confirmation, Leopold asks if something bad happened to him and mentions the abuse. Nervous, Michael denies it, but Leopold continues questioning him about the period when he was in the choir. Uncomfortable, Mikkel avoids answering, and Leopold remembers that Frank, the person responsible for the church choir, was still leading the group at that time. Later, Leopold meets with Adam and Andre to discuss the remains found. He explains that they are still waiting for the analysis to determine how long the remains have been at the location. Then, he suggests a DNA test to confirm whether it is Adam Poznański. Adam's expression changes, and he insists that the mother already informed them that the boy is with his cousins. Leopold counters by saying that she gave vague answers and does not even know where her son is. Upon discovering that he spoke with the woman, Adam becomes irritated, but Andre asks him to control himself. Leopold comments that he suspects some kind of satanic ritual, and Andre says that they will investigate possible connections. Then, Leopold asks them to check the choir, because he discovered that Adam also participated in it. Adam mocks the idea, saying that the boy only did common child activities. Adam questions the connection between the choir and the case, and Leopold reveals that there is a history of abuse involving a child in the place. Andre is surprised and asks where he got that information. Leopold explains that Julia Sarman told him, but Adam disregards the report and calls her crazy, saying that she left the city 20 years ago and would have no way of knowing that. Leopold reminds him that she was also part of the choir, but Adam continues doubting the story. Leopold asks them to follow every possible lead because time is running out. Andre remains suspicious and warns that they cannot cause panic, saying that Father Peter is a good man. Even so, he agrees to investigate the other leads presented by Leopold. In the following days, the remains undergo analysis. The coroner states that there is no evidence of an animal attack, and explains that the marks on the spine suggest the use of a cutting object. When questioned, he estimates that the death occurred about 2 years earlier. After hearing this, Adam leaves the place in a hurry, while Leopold remains worried. Then, he tries to contact his daughter, but his ex-partner, still irritated, refuses to let them talk. Steve says that, many years earlier, Frank, who at the time worked as a gravedigger, caught a man desecrating a body in the cemetery. The two entered into a confrontation, but the suspect managed to flee. Meanwhile, Pietro flips through a book in a cabin until he is interrupted by a woman. She insists that he eat, but the boy refuses. In another room, a man makes a cut on his own leg during a strange ritual. Later, Leopold talks with Frank, who reveals that he found a body abandoned in the cemetery. Upon hearing how it had been left, Leopold notices the similarity with the case he is investigating. Before leaving, Leopold asks Frank if there was any problem during the period when he led the choir. Not understanding the question, Frank states that he never saw any abuse happen there. At that moment, Eric appears, casts a look of contempt at Frank, as if he knew something, and leaves the place. The next day, Leopold receives the result of the DNA test. Soon after, he and Adam visit Adam's mother to inform her that the remains belong to the boy. In shock, she insists that her son is living with his cousins. Leopold then asks who these relatives are, and she replies that they are from the mother's family. Leopold asks if she has ever visited Adam, but the woman admits that she has not, because she believes he is in Brussels. She says that Adam promised that the boy would be adopted by a good family, but the police officer denies the accusation. When she insists, Adam threatens her, saying that she could lose custody of her other children. Pressured by the truth, the woman ends up denying that Adam has any involvement. At the police station, Leopold accuses Adam of pressuring Adam's mother to hide the truth. The commander admits that he tried to scare her to get answers, but Leopold criticizes his attitude. Before the discussion continues, Andre reminds them that the focus must be finding Pietro and orders them to investigate everyone involved in the accusations. Leopold insists on investigating Frank, but Andre says that there is still no evidence and asks him to stay away from the man. Ignoring Andre's orders, Leopold seeks out Father Peter and questions Julia's report about a possible case of harassment in the choir. The priest denies that anything of the sort happened, and Leopold leaves without getting new information. Afterward, he talks with Julia, but she cannot identify the other victim. Frustrated, Leopold reveals that he was transferred to the city because of an old case. He also mentions his colleague Steve, who was also transferred with him. Despite this, he emphasizes that his colleague has a rare talent for finding inconsistencies in investigations. Leopold explains that Steve had analyzed cases involving children in several regions of the country, but found no official record in that city. The only information available was an old publication about Adam Poznanski. Upon noticing the lack of records, Julia understands that someone may be hiding the truth. Shaken, she approaches Leopold in search of comfort, and the two end up hugging. In the emotional moment, Julia kisses him, but regrets it soon after and apologizes. Minutes later, Leopold meets with John, who reveals that he investigated the finances of Adam's family and discovered that their expenses were paid by a foundation created by Marek Chojnacki. Leopold states that he became a suspect because he began helping the family after Adam's disappearance and is also responsible for financing the church choir. Andre shows resistance to confronting Marek, but Leopold insists that Julia's information and his involvement with the choir cannot be ignored. Upon discovering that the victim of the old abuse case was his own son, Andre decides to authorize the investigation. Leopold leads a team to Marek's property to carry out a search. The man tries to stop the operation and makes threats, but the investigation continues. During the search of the place, the agents find only an empty basement until a policewoman locates a memory card hidden in the house. Interrogated by Leopold, Marek explains that his family's foundation has always helped needy residents and that this would be the reason for his support of Adam's family. He also denies any connection with the boy, but Leopold presents the images found on the card, which show several minors, including Adam. Unable to justify the material, Marek is taken into custody and says that all of that belonged to his father. Leopold presents Andre with the material found on Marek's property and reveals that there are images involving his son. Surprised, Andre asks him to organize a list of possible victims. Leopold explains that Marek claimed that everything belonged to his father, who had supposedly kept this material for many years. Still trying to understand Pietro's disappearance, Andre asks who could be involved. Leopold believes that Marek did not act alone and that someone may have helped take the boy. Leopold insists that Adam also be investigated. Andre then reveals that the police officer is related to the Chojnacki family and for that reason had been protecting the case. Realizing that he can no longer cover for him, he decides to remove him. Leopold presents the images to Peter, who becomes uncomfortable with the questions. Then, he talks with Fabiola and reveals that one of the victims identified is one of her daughters. Upon realizing that it is Julia, she becomes emotional. Later, Leopold tells Julia that Fabiola remembered an old trip where Marek's father allegedly committed the abuse. Julia does not believe the memory and avoids seeing the evidence, but admits that the events left marks on her life. Leopold shows Julia the photo of another victim in the hope of getting some identification, but she says that she does not recognize her and reacts with disgust. After Fabiola arrives, Leopold leaves the two together and she remains shaken beside her daughter. Later, Leopold gathers those involved to seek information about this other victim, but no one can recognize her. The next day, Leopold talks with a psychologist who connects the cases of desecration and Adam's death, concluding that a serial killer may be forming and adapting his methods with each crime. The specialist explains that the person responsible may have some psychological disorder and be mixing the crimes with elements of Kashubian folklore. She believes that this behavior may originate from old traumas, such as experiences of violence or abandonment. According to her analysis, the suspect is probably close in age to the victims and belongs to the community itself, since this type of criminal usually acts where he feels protected. She also considers that, if there is a connection with the local legends, Pietro may still be alive and being kept in a place the kidnapper considers safe. Although she cannot point to the culprit, she states that it is someone emotionally unstable who needs help. Julia goes to the church seeking comfort and ends up finding Mikkel conducting the choir. His presence awakens a bad feeling in her, causing her to leave the place. Meanwhile, Leopold organizes an operation to investigate Mikkel's house and decides not to involve Andre. Believing that Pietro may be hidden there, Julia enters the property and finds a secret passage in the basement. Mikkel appears and the two enter into a confrontation, but he ends up allowing her to see the place. When the police arrive, the search reveals that the space was only a prayer room. Shaken, Julia discovers that her son is not there. Afterward, Leopold talks with Steve about the chief's possible reaction. Shortly after, Andre appears, and Leopold admits that he drew hasty conclusions after hearing the specialist's analysis. After the discussion, Andre returns to focusing on the investigation. Leopold explains that the next step is to discover the identity of the last victim, using the records of the Chojnacki Foundation to find new clues. With his permission, the team collects the documents and begins analyzing the material. Meanwhile, Eric confronts his father and discovers that he knew about the crimes, but chose to remain silent to keep receiving financial benefits. Revolted, he moves away and leaves his father behind. Shortly after, John finds him and provides help. Then, Leopold tries to obtain information from Frank by showing the image of the unknown victim, but he cannot recognize her. Leopold tries to find out more about the girl and asks who usually accompanied her. Frank says that he believes her mother was responsible for taking her, but admits that he was not close to the family. Frank remembers that the girl's mother worked in a slaughterhouse and believes her name was Kasia. Back at the police station, Leopold passes the new lead to the team, and during the investigation, Leopold asks Steve about the local legend, and he explains that the belief involves children born with the amniotic sac, something considered a dark sign by the region's tradition. Upon hearing this, Leopold remembers Elizabeth and Julia's conversations about the births of Mikkel and Pietro, noticing a possible connection with the story. Then, the film shows a flashback of a man dropping a plate upon hearing the story. Soon after, it is revealed that he had already been secretly following Pietro. Leopold passes the new lead to his colleagues and asks who organizes the festival, because he recognized a possible suspect, but does not know his name. Meanwhile, Pietro remains in the kidnapper's power. In the cabin, he leaves the boy in Basia's care before leaving, but she is emotionally destroyed by the situation and ends up taking her own life. Afterward, the kidnapper returns and approaches Pietro. At the same time, the police arrive at the place where they believe the boy is, but find the cabin empty. The agents notice only signs that someone had been hidden in the basement. With no new answers, Leopold leaves the place until he hears the dogs in the forest and follows the sound. In the forest, the police find the suspect, who tries to take his own life, but ends up being shot. Julia arrives at the place and finds Pietro alive, while the kidnapper survives and is taken to the hospital. A flashback reveals that Adam died while trying to escape, while Nikki witnessed everything. Afterward, to cover up what happened, Adam helped Nikki hide the body. Then, Leopold confronts Andre and reveals that Adam gave him up. He also discovers that Andre was hiding information from the investigation because he received benefits from the Chojnacki family. The truth comes to light when it is revealed that Nikki was Chojnacki's bastard son, which is why Adam protected him and helped cover up the crime. After stating that everyone involved will answer for their actions, Leopold leaves the place and reunites with Julia at the end.